ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to our session, Evidence-Based Policies in Indonesia, Behavioral Economics and Experimental Approach. To open this session, without any further ado, I welcome Mr. Nunung Nuriantono. Mr. Nunung, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, the Master of Ceremony. Good afternoon, everyone, those who are in Indonesia, and good morning for everyone who are in European zone. Today, this afternoon, we will listen the important research result related to the behavior and experimental approach in Indonesia. Two panelists will deliver the research result based on the evidence in Indonesia. The first panelist is Professor Bambang Juanda, who will share and present the paper title related to study on tax compliance in tax amnesty policy. And the second panelist is Professor Ahmad Fauzi. The title related to the behavior economic model of household energy consumption in West Java, Indonesia. As we may also know that the behavioral economics and experimental economics is the part of important branch in economic science. So we will listen how two important methodology can be applied, especially to produce a better policy recommendation that can be implemented by the government. Evidence-based policy in Indonesia is also part of the important approach from the government or from the policymakers. Without any further ado, I would like to please Professor Bambang Juanda. He is a professor in economics from the Department of Economics, Faculty of Economics and Management, IPB University. His PhD degree is from Innsbruck University, Australia. Time is yours, Prof. Bambang Juanda.
Thank you very much, Pak Nunung. Good afternoon, everybody, especially for International Economic Associations. Let me share my paper, our paper, I mean. Okay. These papers about study on tax compliance in tax amnesty policy is a collaboration between me and Baluki, Puri, Benny, and Anna. And as you know that to support infrastructure development nationally, the government needs to prepare large funds so that development can proceed according to predetermined plan. In 2016, the amount of tax realization only reached around 82% from the targets, and in 2020, the targets can be reached by 89.3%. Yeah. So the problem faced by the governments of Indonesia regarding tax collections is there are still many taxpayers who are not aware of their tax obligations. Yeah. So there are still a lot of workers who have not obtained tax identification number. You can see in 2015, taxpayer registered only 30 million workers. Yeah. And according to Directorate General of Tax in 2015, only around 29.4% of them are registered in the tax systems. Yeah. So that's why, based on the law number 11 of 2016, the governments implemented the tax amnesty programs. Yeah. So as we know that tax amnesty is the elimination of taxes that should be owed, not subject to administrative sanctions and criminal sanctions in the field of taxation, by disclosing previously unreported assets and paying ransom. So tax amnesty policies have been implemented actually in many countries around the world. Yeah. So the successful countries such as Ireland, South Africa, and Italy implemented tax amnesty policy because they implemented the policy was accompanied by law enforcement. Yeah. And the failures of several countries, yeah, was due to too many policies being implemented in those countries, such as in India, around 11 times, yeah, they implemented policy. Bangladesh even 18 times, yeah, they implemented tax amnesty, and the benefit and goals, yeah, for this policy is the increase in tax revenue in the short term through ransom, and in the long term, the state will also receive repatriated funds that can stimulate the economy, and the benefit also to improve the attitudes or behavior of non-compliant taxpayers to become obedient taxpayer in the future. So it will increase long-term tax compliance and incomes. And in these papers, yeah, we will use the experimental approach because this approach cannot only be used to develop an economic theory, but can also have provide consideration for policymakers. Yeah. As you know that if we use the conventional method like survey approach, yeah, such as we use instrument of questionnaire or interview, yeah, we can ask to the taxpayer, are you obedient in paying tax? This is impossible to ask these questions, yeah. And if you use empirical data, yeah, to investigate the factors affecting tax compliance, yeah, I think it's impossible to get about taxpayers, yeah, because this data is not open to the public. Yeah. That's why we can use the experimental approach like Pak Nunung said at the first moment. Indonesia has implemented a poll and push strategy in 2016. Yeah, the poll strategies, yeah, such as this lower tax penalty, such as 2%, 3%, and 5% according to the periods they join the tax amnesty. Yeah, this lower tax penalty compared to the tax that should be borne is expected to increase the declaration of property that was previously hidden by taxpayers. So our research objective is to know about the effects, yeah, the effect of these 5 factors, yeah, on the tax compliance, yeah. And we can measure the tax compliance based on the percentage of taxpayer participating in the tax amnesty, and also the percentage of reported property unit, and also the percentage of reported asset values. Yeah, all these, yeah, these two variables, yeah, compared to the total unit and the total asset value that should be reported. So according the principle of experimental approach, yeah, these investigations, yeah, must be controlled by using injust value theory. Yeah, this is theory by Vernon Smith, yeah, Nobel Prize winner in 2002. So this is the 5 factors we have investigated. Yeah, the wealth, yeah, the expectations, yeah. The wealth factor has 2 levels, yeah, wealthy taxpayers and less wealthy taxpayers. The expectation of future tax amnesty, and the second level, the expectation of future tax amnesty. And the third, tariff periods, yeah. So there are the 3 kind of periods, yeah. These three periods, yeah, has been implemented in our country, yeah. There are 3 periods, 2%, yeah, and then the third 3 months, 3%, and then from January to March in 2017, around 5%. Yeah, And tax penalty, there are three levels, yeah. No tax penalty, lower tax penalty, around to 100%, yeah. This penalty has been implemented in 2000 in our tax policy, tax amnesty programs, yeah. And the fifth factor is about the audits, yeah. So there are two levels of audit. So let me explain a little bit about experimental approach. Yeah. So this primary data, because we have from the previous about from 5 factors, yeah, can be calculated. So there are 54 treatment combinations, and for efficiency, it's experimental subjects. Yeah, we use the students. Yeah, conducted the experiments 3 times. In this regard, the 162 students were randomly assigned to the 54 treatments in every replication. So about the procedures, yeah, when the tax amnesty policy is implemented, the taxpayer know very well the consequence of their action to decide whether to participate and report all or part of their assets. When taxpayer participate or report all their assets, they lose money. They lose money to pay the tariffs, but they feel safe because they will not be subject to 200 fine or after an examination, yeah, after the tax amnesty period ends. It is different if they do not participate in the tax amnesty or do not report all their assets. They are lucky because they do not pay the ransom. But after the tax amnesty period ends, there is a possibility that they will be subject to a 200 fine when investigated. And if each subject behave in his decision based on these incentive structures, then the environmental control principes in the experimental has been fulfilled so that its innate characteristic can be controlled according to the induced value theory. So this is the models, yeah. We use factorial randomized block designs, yeah. This is 5-factor we investigated. And this is the replication. That is the interaction between 2 factors, and this is interaction between or among 5 factors. So, but we just discuss about only the interaction until 2 factor because it's difficult to discuss or to interpret about the interaction more than 3 factors. So in these experiments, the populations, yeah, of this research is all the tax evaders. The population of this research is all the tax evaders who should have joined tax amnesty with the understanding of the consequence. Yeah. And at the end of the experiments, yeah, the student will be given incentive converted into rupiah according to how many of the wealth is left. The incentive that each subject will receive, as above explains, is a function of cash plus assets minus ransom and minus fines, yeah, minus penalty. The analysis we use in these experiments, yeah, is the analysis of a variance, yeah. Analysis of variance will be used since it fulfills normal distribution and homogeneity assumptions. Yeah. After that, the study will be followed by a simple bar chart graphic to see the means between level of each factor. So this is the ANOVA, analysis of variance or percentage of asset unit declared by 5 factors. Yeah. So the red one is the effects which is a significance. Yeah, is significant statistically. But because so many significant, we just present only some factor which is important to present here. And the second one, this is the ANOVA of percentage of asset value declared by 5 factors. And this is also so many factors are significant statistically. So if we see, yeah, this is the asset units, yeah, declared by taxpayers, yeah. This is the percentage, yeah. So around 88%, yeah, asset unit declared by taxpayer for the low wealth group. Yeah, this is for high wealth. Yeah, so we can conclude that taxpayer with lower wealth tend to include more their asset to be repatriated in tax amnesty programs. Yeah. And this similar to the percentage of property value declared. So for the low wealth is higher than for the taxpayer of high wealth. Yeah, for of the high wealth. Yeah. So how about the difference between tax penalty to 100% and tax penalty for hundreds in asset units? So we can see that the higher the rate of tax penalty encourage the taxpayer to be more compliant. So this is tax penalty 0% without tax penalty. This is tax penalty to 100%. This is tax penalty for 100%. So we can see that the higher the rate of tax penalty encourage the taxpayer to be more compliant. Yeah. And how about the interaction between wealth factor and tariff period factors in asset unit declares? Yeah. We can see here. Yeah. This is the two group of low wealth and high wealth. Yeah? And this is the two tariff periods. Yeah? And this is three tariff periods implemented in 2016, yeah, last 2016, and we try to extend the tariff 2%, yeah, until December. So this is 6 months, yeah, to investigate whether the percentage of asset unit declares, yeah, higher than the tariff periods, yeah. So we can see here that the amount of asset unit declared from low wealth taxpayer is still higher than those declared from high wealth. Yeah. So this is 87 compared to 75. This is 82% compared to 80%. And the tail assets unit declared during two tariff periods. Yeah. This is for low wealth. And this is high wealth. Yeah. Each asset unit reported into tariff periods can be seen above, and as in the 2016 tax amnesty, the lowest rate, yeah, this is 2%, the lowest rate in the first period is the favorite, yeah, especially for lower class taxpayer. Yeah, you can see, yeah, for 2%, this is around 86%, and for high wealth, 67%, yeah. But in the last periods, more high wealthy taxpayer have participated. So this is 5%, yeah, more than 1%. So the effect of wealth depends on the tariff period applied, yeah, or there is an interaction between these two factors, yeah. And about the interaction between tax penalty and audit probability in asset unit declared, we can see from these figures, yeah. So when taxpayers are faced with loose audit probability and lower tax penalty, this is lower tax penalty, and this audits with probability of 25%. This is audit with probability of 70%. So the amount of unit declared is much smaller, yeah, when compared to the unit declared in the condition of stricter audit probability and higher tax penalty. So this one, yeah, this is lower, yeah, 74, and this is the highest, 88, 88, yeah, because of the condition with the tax penalty for hundreds and audit probably with probability stricter of 75%. Yeah. So if you from lower tax penalty, the reported units increased by 11% when taxpayer faced with more stringent audit probability. So you can see here, yeah, when the audit probability increased by from 25% to 75%. So there is increase, yeah, around 11%, yeah, from 74 to 85%, yeah. So taxpayer would think twice before deciding to avoid paying the taxes in higher audit. So that in this condition, the level of compliance is relatively high. And about the difference between tax penalty to 100% and tax penalty for 100% in asset value, we can see here, yeah, the higher tax penalty will increase asset value stated, yeah. You can see here that penalty of for 100% around 78%, yeah, who comply with tax penalty. So about the difference between audit probability of 20% and audit probability of 70% in asset value declares, yeah, we can see here, so the higher the chance of being audited, the higher the value reported will be. You see here, 70%, yeah, more than 65%, yeah. This is more compliant for the group of taxpayer with the condition of audit with of probability 75%. And about the interaction between tax penalty and audit probability factor, we can see here that at 200% tax penalty, there is a difference. In this one, when the taxpayer faced by higher audit probability, yeah, you can see here there is a significant difference. Yeah, this is 73% and this is 89%. So when the audit probability opportunity increase into the stricter chance of being audited, the number of reported asset value increased by 14%, yeah, from 73 to 89%, yeah. But in a tax penalty of 400%, yeah, because the tax penalty rate is already high, there is no difference, yeah. There is no difference, yeah. This is 90, this is 97. Yeah? There is no difference in response when a taxpayer are faced higher audit probability. And about the interaction between wealth and tariff periods in asset value declared, yeah, you can see here, this is low wealth and high wealth, and this is two tariff period, and this is 3 periods about asset value declared by taxpayers. Yeah, the amount of asset value declared from low wealth taxpayer is always higher. Yeah, low wealth taxpayer is always higher than those declared from high level wealth, no matter how the periods are regulated.
2 minutes more, or 2 or 3 minutes more, Pak Bambang.
Okay, so about detailed participation between the tariff periods and pre-tariff periods on asset value declared, we can see here the first period, yeah, which imposed by 2%. So the first period with the lowest tariff of 2% has the most significant amount of offset value declared. Yeah. So these taxpayers indeed in line with the fact that most of tax collected in tax amnesty programs are mostly from the first period. Yeah, we can see here the for the facts. Yeah, we faced in the last in 2016. Yeah, so the first period, yeah, is the most taxpayers complied with their paying tax in tax amnesty. So if we see also about the expectations, yeah, we can see here, yeah, when there is a second tax amnesty policy shown in figures 12B, yeah, so there is an additional percentage of reported property value of 4%, yeah. So when there is expectations, yeah, this is 67%, but in the first, yeah, in the first tax amnesty, so only 63%. Yeah. So there is additional 4%. So the result of this experience have an implications that taxpayer become disobedient, yeah, when there is an opportunity for tax amnesty in the future. Yeah. So this is the conclusions. Yeah. The level of taxpayer wealth affects the tax compliance. Yeah, proven by the 3 responses observed in this experience. That the higher wealth taxpayer tend to disobey. Second, the government efforts to impose fines and audits shows a greater effects on tax compliance. And we suggest that Indonesia should focus on taxpayer with high wealth to create stronger law enforcement to increase taxpayer compliance. So I think that's all, Pak Nunung.
Thank you very much, Prof. Bambang Juanda. Interesting, because this research can be based as a foundation for the next tax amnesty policy that's still being discussed between the government and the parliament. So the important conclusion based on different wealth condition of the taxpayer. Now, I would like to continue for the second panelist, Professor Ahmad Fauzi. The paper is related on the behavioral economic model of household energy consumption. I would like to introduce him a little bit. Professor Ahmad Fauzi is Professor of Resource and Environmental Economics and Chair of Graduate Program in Resource and Environmental Economic Department of Resource and Environmental Economic, Faculty of Economic and Management, IBB University. He received PhD degree on economic in Simon Fraser, British Columbia, Canada, and master degree in the same country, Canada, but different university, University of Guelph for Resource and Environmental Economic. Now, Professor Fauzi, time is yours, 20 minutes, then we will have a time for question and answer.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Nunung. Good afternoon, everyone. Good mornings, everyone else on the world. Yeah, this presentation will be in much smaller case than Prof. Bambang did earlier. We've been dealing with, household levels at the city level, because this is the first stage of research on behavior economics. Even though this is half big, it's not really fully behavior economic science in the sense that, we have some design on nudge and everything else. So I would like to present just preliminary assessment of household behavior on energy consumption in the city of Bogor. So mind you that this is not fully statistical experimental testing as what Professor Bambang did earlier. Okay, the research actually is a part of the research conducted by Department of Resource and Environmental Economics. So I was quote unquote sharing this team, and hopefully actually we try to have this research as a multi-stage research. So at the first stage, we still doing some preliminary mapping in terms of classification of household behavior, and then mapping perception. And then eventually we try to do this on the second stage, which is more on designing policy, more on behavior economic instrument choice, nudge behavior, as well as a deliverable of a choice instrument which is more suitable at household level. So second stage is not really done because of the COVID-19, because of all the technical things, and we don't have budget. So I will be presenting the preliminary analysis of the first stage, which is classification and mapping perception. Anyway, so why we are interested in energy consumption? Yeah, because energy consumption is everyday decision making by household. Is not only affected by the economic factor like cost of electricity, or the number of watts. It's just really a matter of choice between behavioral science. How do you choose the watts, the lamp type, for example? How do you choose the switching mechanism, and how do you switch off lights nights and days? So it's a matter of your choice. It's not really a matter of economic factors. So we would think that the behavior economic could be used to understand this behavior and deliver better consumption, energy consumption in the future. But again, mind you, this is caveat, this is disclaimer. Our result is really preliminary, but at least we have some insight from the data, and then we can extrapolate, or we can study further in a larger scale. So I would suggest that the use of energy and energy consumption will be useful for future energy decision. So when the government decided to increase energy, for example, or provided energy subsidy, think about it that the decision to use energy is not only affected by economics component, but also by behavior side of the household economics. So I guess the use of BE energy study so far is still lacking. So we're filling one of the gap in energy studies in terms of behavior economics. Now, we've been using the nudge frameworks and classification method just to get some idea. I would explain later in the next slide that why we use the classification and multidimensional scaling, because as the first stage, the nudge is very important component that the behavior household level will change over time. And again, from the data, we know that the household sector account for 30% of energy consumption in Indonesia. So I guess if you do this to the 30% of Indonesian energy consumption, that will significantly change household behavior in terms of energy consumption. In terms of energy consumption, we know that there are dimension of time, when to use that electricity, when to switch off that electricity, where do you live in whether you're close to your neighborhood, whether you're far away from neighborhood, whether your neighborhood is rich, whether your neighborhood is poor. So everything will be affected your decision to use energy. Let's say if you staying in, for example, in central area in high rise or high cost or high value um, real estate, then your decision to use energy also will be affected. You cannot use like small watt of electricity. You'll be induced by what your neighborhood is doing, during the energy consumption. Similarly, if you're living in the neighborhood, which is like a poor area, you're more likely also will be influenced by how to use energy days and night, and what kind of lamp, or what kind of switch to be used. So everything will be affected by your neighborhood. So that's why in our study we use nudge, especially nudge is one of the big component in behavioral economics. It's basically a small thing that will change, will induce behavior change, either at individual levels or at household level. If you go to Soekarno-Hatta Soekarno-Hatta Export, for example, you observe that one of most urinary in Soekarno-Hatta Airport will be fly painted urinary. This is actually nudge behavior to induce people to have clean urinary ways instead of messing up everywhere. So nudge has three components. The first one is default system. If we have better choice architecture, for example, that the light will be switched off automatically, then people will induce to buy more efficient light, for example. The second component will be social norm. If your neighborhood, all good people induce you to behave also in a good manner. For example, if your neighborhood is very clean, then you also induce your behavior so will be clean. If your neighborhood throw away garbage in scattered way, then you'll most likely do something. So we focus in social norm, and then we try to incorporate the social norm in terms of clustering and perception. And the third one is information framing. This is actually the second stage proposal actually to do information framing. Okay, so the study is focused on household behavior in consuming energy in the city of Bogor. And basically, we're inspired by the philosophy of birds of feather flock together, meaning that if you are in the same flock, in the same community, at the same level of social, at the same level of religious group, at the same level of caste, or the same level of whatever it is, then you tend to have herding behavior, and that herding behavior will induce nudge, and then nudge in this case will induce energy efficiency. That's our philosophy. Basically, we try to what are the flocks together, what are the driving force of people flocking together. So in our case, we classify the neighborhood, the household, into a group of household based on energy consumption, using, for example, from 900 watts energy to 6,000 something. So that's our philosophy. A very simple philosophy. That's the philosophy of behavior economics. Yeah. Um, yeah, the method is very simple. It's not as sophisticated as Prof. Bambang did earlier, because in early stage, we try to use this philosophy, the bird flocks philosophy. We try to clustering first, see if there is a patterns of household in terms of energy consumption. And then we proceed to multi-dimensional scaling to find the nudge factor that induce behavior household in terms of consumption's energy. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, we have some variables or condition that we hypothesize that will induce behavioral change in energy consumption. The first one is the cost of energy, and then the second one is lifestyle, whether you're living in high value environment or you're living in poor environment, that's the lifestyle. Whether you have substituted for electricity with other source of energy, whether it's also influenced by in your neighborhood, in this case your peer neighborhood, whether you use different appliance, for example, either using washing machine or use a microwave. It's very much related to your lifestyle. So if you're living in a rich area, you're most likely using high-tech appliance, using washing machine, using uh, microwave, for example. But it is unlikely if you do the same thing in a poor neighborhood area. Okay, these are the descriptive statistic concerning the classification of these five factor affecting the behavior of energy consumption. Yeah, in terms of cost aspect, for example, only 50% the household will be using energy in moderately efficient. In terms of lifestyle, for example, 30% will be neutral, and in terms of substitution effect, 50% of household um, would likely to induce in more most efficient use energy. So if you have other soft energy, it's most likely you use use energy more efficiently. No, the interesting is the behavior factor, the BE factor, the peer factor, the social norm factor. So it's about 50-50. So if, again, this is confirmed with the hypothesis of behavior economics. If you're flying with the same feather, with the same birds, then you more likely will induce herd behavior. Okay, so the result shows that 50% of household will be induced by your peer, your neighborhood, and that will induce more efficient use energy. So most efficient and the most efficient and efficient energy will be influenced by your neighborhood, where your social norm, which is your nudge. So it's very important for policymaker to consider this factor, because if you're, this is the same thing with energy study in other countries. For example, in the United States, when you receive energy bill in the envelope, and at the back of the envelope, it was said that there's a word saying that your energy bill this month is such and such. Let's say $50 or $100. But there's a but word. But your neighborhood saved 50% of their bill, for example. So when using that peer pressure, that's induced the behavior of household to conserve more energy. So this is one of the critical finding in behavioral economic study in terms of energy. The importance of social norm, the importance of a nudge is very crucial in the driving the consumption of energy to more the most efficient use of energy. Now, who is this peer aspect? It's not only your family, but also non-family, such as friends and college or your neighborhood. Is very much important in influencing your decision to use energy efficient. Why we did this? Again, the philosophy is the birds of the same feather flock together. If your neighbor using the same kind of energy, using the same behavior or energy, that's will likely induce your behavior to the same level of energy efficient. So we found that there are three clusters in Bogor area. The first one is related to 15 area. It is mostly on electricity between 450 to 900 watts. There will likely we have the same behavior in terms of consuming energy and and decision to use energy more efficiently. The second cluster is somewhere between group 3 and 4, using consumption electricity of 1300 watts to 2200 watts, and then the fifth one and sixth one is above that one. So there is one cluster in the middle, which is cluster number 3, which is small area. This is mostly like the neighborhood with 2200 watts of electricity. The behavior is a bit different than the cluster 1 and the cluster 2. So this finding also reinforced that the bird of the same feather flock together. That will induce your energy efficient, your friends, your neighborhood, your college will important in determining your choice to use energy more efficiently. Yeah, this is just reinforcing what we had in the previous graph, that most family are in cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3. There's not much difference in terms of a number of size of a family and income, but in terms of behaviors, a little bit significant. So this is the poor area, and then the other one is the rich area. The neighborhood is a bit different. If you're living in a poor area, you will be likely induced by the poor behavior. If you're living in the rich area, again, you will likely use more energy because you tend to show to your friend, to show to your neighbor that you're rich, that you avoid to pay more energy compared to those in the poor area. Yeah, the second assessment is to find the nudge power that will induce the behavior change in energy consumption. Again, the peer friends, which is the nudge, the driving force for changing behavior is your neighborhood, which is your family, non-family, that will influence your decision to use energy more efficiently. This is very close to the cost saving. If your neighbor say, well, I'll tell you what, I've been saving this energy for such and such. I've been using this energy for a month. I've been using this type of lamp, for example, for a month. It shows that I pay less and less. Then you'll be influenced by that statement, okay? And then your neighbor say, okay, I have a cost saving by switching light, for example, during the, from 10 p.m., for example, to 12 p.m. And then the neighbor said, okay, I switch off my television when I slept, for example. Then this kind of behavior, this kind of cost saving wording, this kind of wording by your neighbor will influence your decision also to save your energy, to use energy more efficiently. This is in behavior economic, what we call the power of nudge. Remember, one of the striking factor in behavior economic is the nudge. The nudge is a social pressure that will induce your behavior, that it will change your behavior into more cost efficient. Okay, so the key finding actually, again, our philosophy is the clustering, the birds of the same feather flock together. If you're living in the same compound, if you're living with the same emotionally, socially close to your system or to your level, then your mind actually will be induced by your neighbor to in terms of a decision to save your energy. Yeah, we found that the people living in the rich compound, for example, tend to use energy in less efficient manner compared to those in lower class neighborhood, for example, because not only influenced by the cost factor, but also influenced by decision of their neighborhood, the social factor, to use less energy. Yeah. except in some area because some people use stealing energy from public power. The last finding, we found that the nudge factor, which is influenced by your neighborhood, by your friends, your family, will very much influence you to conserve energy and to use energy more efficiently. So this finding is really important for the government to consider behavior of community when dealing with the energy policy. This all, Prof. Nunung. I hope these findings are useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Fauzi. Very interesting study on how behavior of economic agent related to the energy consumption. I would like now to open question from the audience. I note that there is one question from Muhammad Bara. For those who would like to ask question, you can write directly into chat box, or even you can raise your hand. Then I can see who will have a question. But first question related to the how the proposal from the government from the next tax compliance, based on your view and your assessment, Prof. Bambang Juanda, it will promote tax compliance among taxpayer, or probably the opposite, as your experimental methodology shown us how the behavior of different taxpayer. Please, Pak Bambang.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a good question. Yeah, as I told you, yeah, about the result of our experiments, yeah, about the factor of expectations, yeah, expectation of the tax amnesty policy will be implemented in the future. Yeah, so if there is expectations about this, yeah, so maybe at this year, yeah, at the current policy implemented, yeah, maybe the tax compliance, yeah, or the tax compliance, yeah, only around 4%, yeah, less than if the tax amnesty policy implemented only once, yeah, rather than we have expectations there will be tax amnesty policy will be implemented again in the future, yeah. So this will be less than about 4%, yeah, based on our experience, yeah. So relating to the question of Muhammad Bara, yeah, his proposals, yeah, from Minister of Economic Coordinator and Head of Bappenas, yeah, I would say that this not significant, yeah, to promote tax compliance among taxpayers, because when I present about the experience of some countries, yeah, which countries success in this policy, which countries failure in this policy. So the success countries, yeah, in this policy, because they implemented the tax amnesty policy, were accompanied by law enforcement, yeah, by law enforcement, by stricter law enforcement, yeah. So if the governments, yeah, implement again about tax amnesty policy without stricter law enforcement, I think there will not significance, yeah, to promote tax compliance among tax payers, yeah. I think this is my opinion. I would say it's not significant, not significant to promote the tax compliance among taxpayers, yeah, because this is related to our experiments, yeah. So the taxpayer will join only less than 4%, yeah. I think that's all, yeah.
Yeah, okay, Pak. Then we'll continue with another question still related with the experimental methodology, just in case the respondent or the actors are not student but the real taxpayer, will the result different? This is another question that you can answer. Is there also any test validity from the finding of experimental methodology? Then I will come to Pak Fauzi later on.
Okay, so there are two kinds of validities in the research, in academic research, There are internal and external validity, And if we view from the viewpoint of internal validity, in the experimental approach is very good, because we can control other environment factors, who can interfere the cause effect of between factors and between response, So if we see from the viewpoint of internal validity, this is very good. This is better. The experimental approach is better than survey methods. But if we see from the viewpoint of external validity, it depends on our designs. Last fall, in 2016, I have been asked by Bank Indonesia, to investigate by using experimental approach, using laboratory research and field research based on the experimental design. So there is a consistency between laboratory research and field research, But that's all. It depends on our designs, As long as our design is valid, So maybe the external validities, can be valid as well, I think this is the answer of this question, Pak Nunung.
Thank you. Then, Prof. Fauzi, there is one question from Jaya regarding on the selection of 5 clustering. What did you use the criteria? Then you can cluster. And also question from my side regarding on the behavioral economics. Can then policymaker implement a good policy using a behavioral economics methodology? 2 questions, Prof. Fauzi, please. Time's yours.
Yeah, thank you. Those are a good question. The thing is, when we try to select the criteria, the 2 things that must be observed. The first one, what we call observed behavior or observed criteria. In so many neighborhoods, we observe that their lifestyle, they're using appliance, the different kind of light, different of the switching that will be including in the cost variable, for example, in our clustering. So the first one is observed behavior or observed criteria. Then this observed criteria, and then we tested in the neighborhood before we are doing the research. Now, the second one is based on the literature review. We've been, reviewing so many literatures on energy behavior economics. Some of them are using the same criteria. So by combining these 2 types of criteria, the one is observed criteria and the one literature criteria, then we come up with the best, most observable, doable, easily accessible in terms of our research. From then, we move on to HAC, which is hierarchical clustering, which is unsupervised machine learning, actually. We could choose, for example, random forest or KNN, but we prefer to use HAC because as the first stage, it is much easier and it's much more reliable in terms of small data compared to random forest, for example, and KNN. Later on, we can compare all this clustering mechanism or classification, which one is give the best accuracy or the best precision. Regarding to Pak Nunung, this is very interesting because behavior economic has been used by policymakers, even in the United Kingdom, for example. Just on the right side of Downing Street number 10, which is the Prime Minister office, there is an office called Nudge Office. Nudge Office is a special office dedicated to behavior economics, which gives inputs to the government on how the impact of the policy to the society before they implementing the policy. So it's very useful. Again, in 2015, there is a publication by Human Development Reports. Basically, it's all good practices report in terms of everything from water consumption, energy consumption, transportation, everything in terms of public policy, all using behavior economics as a policy instrument. So this is very interesting. And Indonesia is very much still lacking this kind of policy. So I guess this is very good step in terms of giving different policy inside to the government. I guess that's all, Pak Nunu.
Thank you, Prof. Fauzi. One last question for Professor Bambang from Mausumi. Will lead the greater tax revenue, face-to-face audit plus tax amnesty, or faceless assessment plus tax amnesty?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, as you know, from our presentations, that the factor of audits, yeah, and tax penalty affect the tax compliance, yeah. But as I said, that as long as these policies, is not accompanied by law enforcement, I think it's not significant, to improve the tax compliance, whether face-to-face audit or faceless assessments, it is depends on the follow-up policies, It is accompanied by law enforcement or not, That's all, Pak Nunung, And there is interesting question also, So will the result be different if the actors are real personal taxpayer and not students, Based on other experience of our experience of our experiments that's the higher income, the higher income of taxpayers is the lesser tax compliance, So we can conclude that for the real personal taxpayer, of course this is less than this is less tax compliance than student, of course, but the effects of these 5 factors, I think similar. It is consistent with the real factors. About the 5 factors we studied in our experience about the wealthy factors, the expectation, tax penalty, audit probability, and also the what we call the periods. I think the same. Whether the experimental subject, student, or the real persons. But of course, the real actors about the tax compliance, it is less than a student, of course. I think that's my answer of this question. Thank you, Pak Nunung.
Thank you very much, Prof. Bambang and Prof. Fauzi. Time flies like an arrow. Almost 1 hour, we discussed about the interesting methodology related to experimental approach and behavioral economics. We still have a lot of work to share our important methodology that not really still not common for our student, for policymakers. So we still have a huge effort how we promote experimental economics as well as behavioral economics, not just only for policymaker that they will more confident using this methodology, but also for our student. And I would suggest Professor Fauzi and Professor Babang Juanda will be as a leader in Indonesia to share all important experience, to share stock of knowledge on behavioral economics and experimental economics. So, and I believe that IPB University also will have some important knowledge then can be shared to all colleagues all over Indonesia. I think time is up because the committee just provide us 1 hour, and 1 hour is not enough to discuss A to Z all the things related to methodology, related to experimental economics and behavioral economics. Thank you very much for all audience who very patient, listen our experience from Professor Ahmad Fauzi and Professor Bambang Juanda. And thank you very much for Professor Bambang Juanda and Professor Ahmad Fauzi already share very interesting experience on behavioral economics as well as experimental economics. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
we will see you all soon in different event.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. I would like that